Welcome back to the Hajas and Hallro show.
High, low, no show.
Right, so high and low and no show. We're ready to make history here with the wild card version of our debate on mankind's greatest achievements. It's Mankind Madness here in the tiny house, Ramona, California. Eddie Hajas' tiny house. What an achievement. What a monument to tiny achievement.
What a great place to do the show. Right?
That's the backdrop for our show today.
Yeah, this is the fun bracket. These are the things that most people probably won't even know that exist, that we benefit from, that at least we've been benefited from, and we're here to share all of these inventions.
And remind you guys, because you might know they exist, but you might take it for granted or just, basically take advantage of it without ever considering the fact that these typical inventions or discoveries or paradigm shifts really don't have much of a class of their own. They're just kind of the wild card. They're thrown into the mix of humankind achievement, and who knows what you get out of it. Everybody gets something different out of it. For example, duct tape. Duct tape is a hell of a wild card. It's a great way to start the wild card. Duct tape can be used for just about anything, from wardrobe to home improvement to automotive to 1,000-mile-an-hour space tape they put on Boeing planes. You can use it to hang our board here. You can use it, to do practical jokes on people. I mean, duct tape is a hell of a way to start off the wild card.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still on my list of a great Halloween outfit.
Mr.
Just
Duct Tape.
Pure duct tape. I'm talking no undergarments, duct tape, head to toe,
Classic
hair
Ages.
included, just maybe a little pee hole to do your business. But do the number 2 before you get suited up.
Right.
And expect a painful dismount out of that thing.
Well, lucky for you, you've got 10 months to worry about that. As we sit on the cusp of 2018, here in December, Southern California, 2017, we've got plenty on our minds, and we want to share it with you. And this is, our ongoing episodic entries into Mankind's Madness, where we will fill out a 60-14 bracket with most of mankind's no-brainer, huge achievements that have lasted for time immemorial, or are the most recent discoveries or breakthroughs that will change human history and the course of this earth that we live on. And now we're talking about basically the things that we can't really pigeonhole into the prior categories, which were discoveries, paradigm shifts, and inventions. So these are your wild cards. Welcome to the wild card episode here at the Hajas and Hallro show.
Yes. So these are the things.
Whiteboard might be one of them. I'm taking all my energy out on the whiteboard, but that's all good. This is our technology. How do you like it?
Yeah, so I'll tell you one thing, Hall, that humanity
Present.
cannot go without, and it's humor, right?
Humor.
Humor without a doubt. And I'm going to dwindle it
It's
down
not the humor.
to the original humor. Some sources say that in written history, the very first joke ever placed on papyrus or whatever it was at the time, rocks, was a good old fart joke, right? Even little kids, when they fart or even shart at sometimes, they even get a kick out of it.
Scatological humor.
They might go into tears and feel uncomfortable, but originally, there's always a little joy of a little bit of gas coming out of the body.
Yeah.
So that
the oldest joke known to mankind. I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, what would you think? It's universal. Everyone has to deal with the shit.
Right, exactly. Humor is a great point because, you have to have a little bit of levity in everyday life. If you take it too seriously, you'll never get out of life. And that's kind of the point. It's like, I'd say, why so serious? Or die laughing if it's possible. So, yeah, a certain bit of humor, which you should find in this show because we're not academics. We're taking a very layman stance of it. And really, this is an entertainment purpose. So if you wind up laughing at us, good for you. And the thing about humor that I like, as much as tragedy, so tragedy and comedy, both of them are involuntary responses. If you're driven to tears, brought to tears, or you can't stop laughing uncontrollably, they're involuntary responses. So good on you.
Those are the things that, at the end of our lives, those are the things that we'll remember. Those are the things you'll remember being with your friend. Someone does something ridiculous, and having a good old
That
laugh.
reminds me. Why did Helen Keller's dog jump off the cliff?
What was that?
You would too if your name was. Anyhow, that's a great point. I'm glad. So just know that this podcast here is organic. Like, I have no idea what the hell he's going to say over here in Hajas land. And hieroglyphics, you'll be lucky to understand what the fuck I'm saying anyways. But we are totally we haven't had any preemptive discussions about most of this. We really haven't prepped any of this. We're just basically shooting from the hip and kind of spitballing, brainstorming stuff that'll wind up on this board and wind up on your board feed. Or what is it called up there? The PowerPoint,
real-time board.
Realtimeboard. So you guys can see exactly how this thing unfolds before your eyes. And we thought we take you behind the scenes. We'll show you all these preliminary meetings before the end result is to get these ideas, put a 1 to a 16 next to them, and put them in a bracket a la the NCAA men's basketball, women's basketball tournaments, and have them fight single eliminations. So I like the idea of humor. Throw humor out there. On any given day, could humor beat the wheel? Could humor beat penicillin? I mean, any given day.
I don't know. Like, we talk about penicillin's definitely lengthened our life, but a good joke, that is what makes life way more meaningful. Like I'm gonna probably push for humor pretty hard.
Right. You have inside jokes. You have practical jokes. You have presidents that are jokes. I mean, like, it just keeps going.
From the Gesture to Andrew Dice Clay.
Right.
Like, it's part of it should be a part of everyone's life. Some of these things that we're talking about, we're, like we said many times, we bring the show to you so you have an understanding of the greater picture and where we came from. But some of these things should just be a part of every single day, like a joke or just a good old laugh.
And think about the delivery, and we also want to go kind of macro, because what's the first instance of this, or what's the most important nexus or meta piece of any of this, and what are the micro pieces that have been somehow devolved or succeeded after the fact. But for example, there's many different avenues where you get your humor, and these days, I mean, I think memes on the internet, I would put memes up there, and I think the latest discovery of being able to take stock art, and any anonymous person can write any quote they want to on a picture and put it on the internet or on a t-shirt or on mail it to your friends, whatever you want, and turn it into a meme. It's the everyman's method of humor delivery, and sometimes it means something to somebody and it means nothing to somebody else, so it's very individualistic. And I meme is the vanguard of humor for the 21st century.
Yeah.
Memes are to global dominance in the 21st century as China is to global dominance in the 21st century. Memes are the new mode. And what used to be a bumper sticker, and I still think bumper stickers are probably one of my wild cards too. We'll have to duel it out and see if they wind up on the board. But I'd take memes over bumper stickers. But everybody had bumper sticker idealism. You'd follow behind somebody and they'd have a political bumper sticker or say, my dogma ran over your karma, or my karma ran over your dogma, or dog is my co-pilot, or anything you want that somebody's got a bumper sticker. That used to be, the 20th century's versions of a statement, of a meme, a bumper sticker idealist. But nowadays you can just take that and put it right into a meme. So who knows, memes, bumper stickers, but they really follow in your thing, your lead off. It's humor, and I'm so happy to hear Eddie said that, because it's it's words to live by.
Yeah, and but jumping, I'm going to bring it back to shifting to another macro concept. Drum, just the drum, the good old kumbaya. Could be two sticks together to the raw cowhide percussion. One of the most original entertainment methods of mankind ever.
Well, also for music, I mean, you had song and you had drums. Before you had reeds, before you had strings, I'm sure percussion is probably, the preliminary or the preemptive musical backdrop for anything. I have music on wildcard. It's the first thing I have here. So by listing percussion, I think you're right. And by listing drums,
yeah, like
take it back to the caveman.
Learning how to put you and your tribe in a meditative state, transcendental state,
or drumming it up before battle, getting ready to kind of to steel the
fired
troops up for battle, or just laying a mean old, for a jazz track or heavy metal.
Good old Moby Dick. John Bonham.
John Bonham, yeah, there you go. Some Zeppelin. John Bonham might be one of the best examples of drumming there is out there.
That would be the most refined drumming possibly in the world.
Yeah, Ringo's star, but yeah, percussion goes, and then it goes into just beats, right? And beats are the rhythm of life. So drums have a lot to do with rhythm, and if you're in rhythm, if you're in sync, things are in balance. If you're out of rhythm, if you're out of sync, if you have no ritmo.
Yeah, it creates like organization in the chaotic world that we have. There's something that's very constant.
A cadence, a gait.
Yes. And yeah, always very calming to the soul to hear a good drum track or just get caught up into some percussive type of movement and sound.
So whereas I would have thrown music in general, the panoply that is music, Dear Hajas over here says, let's just stick with drums. So
I like thinking about like prehistoric times, like
prehistoric. He does.
Like going back to
go to the caveman.
Going back because there's not a lot of entries back in that time.
What would Joe C do? Yeah.
We have fire back in that time. Maybe cooking. I put drums.
Just
in there,
to set the record straight, we don't have to be on the caveman thing. I mean, basically, these are some of the preeminent things that got us to where we are. But we can also focus on things that are, like I said, most recent, like memes, etc. Because these are mankind's greatest achievements to date, and the things that will have the greatest influence on mankind going forward. Now, we can look always to our past, drums, like we've already talked about cave paintings and fire and the invention of the wheel, and all these things are going to wind up on the board. And drums is the musical equivalent of that for purposes of our discussion.
Yeah. We could even branch off into Beethoven, Mozart,
yeah,
maybe
composers are amazing. I mean, think about how fantastic that was. No TV, people basically lived through the reverie that was devolved from somebody's mind, some genius with musical notes from A to G, and they basically put them in the synchronous order, and they basically were like doing clockwork with musical notes, and they managed to synergize everybody from timpani drums to harpsichords and flutes and baritone in between, and sometimes even operatic singers, that kind of stuff. Beethoven, Mozart, but we'd probably just leave it at the opera or classical music orchestra, as we would, because I think we've kind of steered clear of putting any one human in this.
There's too many, but I always.
And that's not about what it is. It's how everybody uses it. There's 8 billion of us on this planet. Fuck Amadeus Mozart. Is he more important than Pablo Picasso, or either one of them more important than the guy Louis Pasteur, or Jesus, or Hitler, or any of these guys? So we're not talking about people. Fuck people. That's kind
of the discussion. There's some people on here. There's people in this list, but
maybe he's got people.
I always wondered if
if
people like back in the day of like Mozart and Beethoven, if people got together and tailgated for did they
pre-funk for
the opera? Was there like hordes of people outside of the Colosseums, just getting fucked up, just being like, oh, I can't wait to fucking Beethoven play Symphony No. 9, dude. Yeah. Like they're just like they're hoping for their favorites, getting all fucked up, and then but back in the day, like you didn't like everyone's just completely quiet.
I think people were a lot more reserved because they didn't want to stand out for fear of being a heretic or being persecuted or basically being considered a weirdo. And these days, people are more free to be as individualistic as they are. And a lot of that goes back to everybody marches to the beat of their own drum. So here we go, full circle. But what do these things mean to you, the watcher, the listener, the podcast connoisseur? What we're really trying to accomplish here is to put together the pantheon of all of these things that kind of trickle down to everything else.
What's your soundtrack? What's the soundtrack of your life? And you probably should have some sort of soundtrack. Some sort of form of music expression should be a part of your daily life in some way, shape, or form. So music in general or a specific thing in music is on the board.
You want a specific thing in music? Here's one for you. Star Wars. I'm putting Star Wars up on the list. And it's not for nothing that in today's day and age, we have a neo-biblical story of rebels and empires, and we don't need any God complex in this. We just simply have Jedis and Sith good and bad, fire and water, black and white type of fucking battles. But the thing is, the Star Wars has become, to this particular day and age, what the story of Jesus used to be. I mean, it's biblical. It's damn near biblical, and it's pervasive. Star Wars goes through every line of life. People basically say, "I've never seen Star Wars," and that's fine because I've never read the Bible. But it's kind of tantamount to it, and people take it and they internalize it. This struggle that's been portrayed by certain characters that are time immemorial at this point, and everything will be based on that, especially Lego sales. So I go from Star Wars to Legos, and Legos is one of my huge...
Specifically Star Wars Lego sets.
Star Wars Lego sets could be one of the biggest wild cards of today's day and age. But Legos in general, generic Legos, and Star Wars, I'd throw those in on the board.
I'm more of a Lincoln Log guy.
Right, but Lincoln Log building blocks, we'll just say one type of this thing. It could be the generic Legos, so we don't want to give Legos any credit because they're already well paid enough, and they're not paying us any money to talk about it.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking building blocks are some kind of child's toys that people learn how to create, their own environment and the building blocks for their own tactile hand-eye coordination, ideas, inventions, imagination, things of that nature. So if you have humor, you got to have imagination. So the Star Wars story is the very detailed and intricate storyline for that, but you could start with just a few building blocks and say, here I've got an airplane, what do I want to call it? I want to call it an X-Wing. What's this guy's name? Well, his name's pretty simple. It's Han Solo, and we make our movie via whatever.
And moving on from the building blocks, the most amazing building that most people are going to say in the world are the Great Pyramids of Egypt.
Touché.
Nothing but, you can call them Legos, stacked neatly, aligned to planets, the north direction, spaces with amazing acoustics, hieroglyphics of stories,
and
tombs.
That's what they're built for. They're built for tombs.
And to shoot the soul to Orion's belt, whatever the hell is out there, connecting it to Star Wars. Maybe that's why Star Wars is battling, going to that belt to the promised land, wherever that is. But without a doubt, even to this day, it's debated what the pyramids really mean. That was thousands of years ago. I don't know, 2,000-3,000 years ago, right? The pyramids were built. We, as a civilization, have never even came close to the grandeur and the precision of that at that time.
And that's because aliens are widely described as being responsible for it.
Yeah, possibly. It's definitely possible.
There you go, humor, building blocks, all wrapped up into one. But you're absolutely right. Architecture is a big part of that, and how mankind builds and creates environments for them to live in, not unlike the Eddie Hages tiny house we are currently broadcasting from in a much smaller scale. But yeah, the simplistic notion of building blocks, and there was a deification of these processes. It was all under some kind of godly backdrop.
As a matter of fact, this house that we do the broadcast in was inspired by the pyramids. When I was 8 years old, I set out to read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. Remember those?
Yeah, remember that? But, I mean, they're so passe, I don't even know if we put encyclopedias.
They're not even. They just is a flame that went out.
Wikipedia might be taking out encyclopedias as it stands, but so continue.
But I got through middle of the A, read architecture, was completely fascinated, and I remember actually writing in a little journal as a 7-year-old boy saying, I'm going to be an architect. What am I going to design? I'm going to design pyramids. I'm going to design the Colosseum. There's a couple other things that I was going to decide, but I was very set forth on designing something of major grandeur. And then about 3 years ago, out of the blue, I discovered the tiny house movement. And I was like, that's a really nice small footprint, very attainable. I can design everything inside of this place that I need.
And it's transient too. You can move it.
Make it as big as an idea and thought process as the pyramids themselves. And I've been living in this for the last 2 years. It's a proud host of this podcast. It is
research it online for the tour.
YouTube, Eddie Hages Tiny House Experience. And it's out of nowhere the last couple of years, it's been on fire. Not literally, thank God. I've been far
Thank God, yeah. We have retarded that fire.
But I think it just might have a shot to get in the bracket.
It might have a shot, right. It's like the trajectory of the tiny house has been nothing but exponentially up so far. So kudos to you. You were on the vanguard of that movement. You're not a change resistor. You're an early adopter of the tiny house. And you're an architect. And you have put your mark on this tiny house, and it can travel to a town near you if you're lucky.
Yes.
Just like this podcast can travel to a broadcast near you if you will it to be.
Just put in the comments if you want to host this podcast.
Right.
But this is just the next stepping stone of a more grandeur architectural form that's in my mind. This got the whole thing started. I was able to see it through. I know I can do it. Now I can move up in stature and maybe make something as grand as the pyramids.
Well, and you're talking about monuments. You built a monument. We're talking about monumental. This is a monumental podcast. We're debating the most important conversation in human history between Eddie and I. But, also you're talking about the pyramids. Those are monuments. Machu Picchu is monument. Eiffel Tower, Statue of Liberty. Humans like to build huge, grandiose things. I mean, look at China. Everything they do is 300% what it needs to be. They love monumental shit because humans just get in awe of taking what we were basically an ant farm and we build huge ant hills. That's, what we're talking about is humans love to do monumental stuff, and we can leave Legos to the building blocks of the pyramids and something like that. It's got to be up here. I mean, monuments to our civilization, monuments to our existence, monuments to our worship, monuments to engineering feats. Those are certainly wild cards that you can expect to see. Specific examples or generic, we'll leave it to us. But basically, the macro is what we're talking about. We're not going to try and delve too deep into too many derivations or successors of the initial or the original. If you can't get much better than the original, then you don't belong on the list. The originals belong on the list.
Speaking of an original, Shakespeare.
I thought you were going to say Coors, banquet beer, but okay. Shakespeare, perfect.
Shakespeare, right? Like
yeah.
If you're going to talk about Hollywood and movies and that, even Star Wars, right?
Right.
He is one of the originals.
The Bard's Tale.
To create long format human drama that's very relatable and poetic, right? Very encrypted messages in his writing, in his style. Without him, you don't see probably Hollywood at all. You don't see a lot of even fiction writing. He took probably what was a very small little trend at the time of fictitious writers and just took it to a whole nother level. He's definitely beloved even today.
Right, and he changed language. He manipulated the languages in ways no one ever thought possible. I mean, plenty of the proverbs and the phrases you use in modern language on a day-to-day basis stemmed from Shakespeare. But, Shakespeare basically was passed the baton before him. They often say there are no new ideas. Well, certainly there are transitions to those ideas that come about. Shakespeare would be one of these masters that managed to harness that. Literature beforehand used to be, very cut and dried. It was a hero's journey, or there was a love tale, and then along the ways they started digressing or diverging into more far out tales to the point that now that you get to Star Wars and things of that nature. Yeah, so sci-fi, but before that you had to have things that were all based in humankind's kind of experiences before they started getting into the larger fictions, and they were all based in certain genres, and thematics, and then certain ones would break out of that.
Yeah, and so since him, there's been numerous authors that have come and gone up to this point right now. You wrote a book.
There's a book.
The last couple of years, right?
There's a book. Ye old rotund pelican, guilty as charged. My friend Rotund here asked me to write a biography about him because, this particular pelican coming from San Diego, California, you get to see pelicans all over the place. Well, this guy is a remarkable pelican. And you'd have to find the book and kind of read it to check out his long journey, his circuitous journey around the world, which is more or less an autobiography for many people, and you can relate to it for the kids and adults alike. But this was my particular masterpiece vis-a-vis Eddie Hages' Tiny House. And maybe, just maybe, this particular piece of literature, Shakespeare can take a seat, and we'll just put Rotund up there.
It has a great cast, right? You have Curmudgeon the Crab.
Curmudgeon the Crab's in there.
I think he led the high school team in assists.
That's right.
There he is.
He likes to chef it up. Yeah. The Rotund, he's the dunk and dive kind of guy. So certainly, if you were looking for a parable for a wild card, Rotund Pelican is up there, and he's in a long line of literature famed people like our friends Mark Twain, Shakespeare, Homer,
Plato,
whoever the guy, Plato and Aristotle, philosophy. So there's a good one. Philosophy. Think about that as far as humankind taking their brain power and maximizing it. And guys like Marcus Aurelius, a very stoic philosopher who was a Roman emperor, and he boiled things down to the very nut basics of being a stoic and of principles to live by and or die by. And that all goes back to philosophy and some long-winded conversations done in the arcades of ancient Greece.
Yeah, Socrates is one of my favorites. I mean, I think this podcast is the Socratic or whatever Socratic method that we're performing here right now.
Absolutely,
we're placing ideas out there and thoughts, and we're debating, and it's a dialogue. We're not here to be right or wrong. Although
a dialectic,
the bracket will prove to be what is right. But this is the bigger picture is this dialogue
discussion
that should be triggering your mental and brain synapses to be firing. You should be creating your new perception of this planet that we live on.
I've got it
right here.
Existential angst. Think about that. Eat your heart out, Freud. Here's the point. If existence precedes essence, it's existentialism. So we're here before we can be a certain way. I had to be here before I got cool, that kind of thing. But existential dread even is like, why are we here? What the fuck are we doing here? What is my end goal? Are we talking about free will or determinism? And I think all that goes under philosophy, which Hages here managed to kind of open the door for. And that is so open-ended, but maybe we can just throw philosophy in there, and humankind manages to see philosophy go into the bracket as a 4 seed, and philosophy, will it go up against surgery or medicine? Will it go up against a battery? Will it go up against airplane flight? Who knows? But what's more important? Yeah, Jesus versus philosophy, versus the Hippocratic oath of the doctors versus the Socratic oath of a philosopher. Who knows? But yeah, certainly philosophy, religion, things of that nature all belong on the wild card section, in the wild card quadrant. And the matchups are it's untenable. What's more important in your daily life? You guys probably live all your lives thinking more about what's going on with the Kardashians than existence precedes essence. And maybe we need to dumb it down a little bit back to the more basic things.
I'll tell you what will change that up real fast, though, getting people out of that mindset. Good old plague.
The plague.
And talking about the Black Pit Plague, one of the most destructive instances of human history. I've seen numbers as high as 25% eradicated humans. Right. Black Plague. Can you imagine? Right now, we're at almost 8 billion, and can you imagine over the course of the next maybe decade or two if we went down to 6 billion? How insane that would stir up everything. Like that whole Black Plague drove so many of the inventions that we've seen up here before. So, like we said before, a lot of this is a celebration of humanity. There might be times that there might be moments of darkness and tragedy, but what came out of that was steps in medical discoveries, sanitation systems, a lot of the things that we've had to overcome.
And result or unintended consequences. I mean, the unintended consequences of humans living on top of each other with rats in an urban environment was the Black Plague. I mean, you talk about that, I think about war. I mean, it's like you started talking about this, and I thought you had to go to war. Think about one thing that is intrinsically human is violence, or maybe just even beyond that, like a sin, like retribution or murder. That's huge, And what we do on a global scale to fight people. Sure, animals are predatory, right? And there's a food chain, and this animal eats that animal, which eats that animal, which eats that plant, which eats sunlight, and then there's that chain. Well, humans have totally subverted that and basically gone ahead and created their own predation scale of humans on humans. And the singular thing about that is violence and warfare. So you bring plague to the table. I'm like, plague kills a lot of people. Warfare kills a boatload of people too. Warfare is a singular human achievement or accomplishment or whatever you want to call it, and it's negative as all get out, but it's a big point of it. We talked about gunpowder and firepower, firearms, things of that nature. The end result of that is death. Humans killing humans.
There's a few.
It's not all sunshine and roses blowing up
one of the end results, right? And technology is other, like planes getting around fast, being able, like even drones these days. Now we're taking the human element out of at least half of 50% of the equation of murder and killing, where you don't even need to be face to face. But without a doubt.
Well, we talked about the antidote and the poison are the same thing. So medicine can create an antidote for a wicked, disease. They can also create a wicked disease and use it to inflict upon people. And why humans take it upon themselves to create enemies and blood battles and bloodbaths is a particularly human accomplishment. An animal will pursue another animal for food, for survival. But we're not talking about survival anymore. We're talking more or less about sport. We're talking about domination. We're talking about power. We're talking about things that, philosophically speaking, which comes first.
And I'm going to throw one of an actual individual in this war debate because I think
Watch out. Here it comes.
One of, by far, the biggest...
biggest dick?
He considered by many a big dick, but Genghis Khan. He murdered,
he had a big dick because he had a lot of kids.
Killed so many people that he actually changed
human
history, but it also changed the climate. The climate actually dropped a few degrees, according to some scientists, when he was all done. And there was this really cool. There's this really cool there's this really cool.
The cooling of the earth, as brought to you by Genghis.
There's this cool. I don't know if it's like a meme or something, but it in a 1 minute period, it lights up a part of this map. It's a little pin light of everywhere that there was a million population in a condensed period, and I think they started it at time of Christ, 0. So there's only a couple little pinpricks of light, and then you see him slowly get faster and faster and faster, and then you see Genghis Khan, and you see all the lights just go out in that area because it's just devastated. And that we can say he was.
But subsequent to that, there were a lot of lights because they say 1/3 of Mongolia and a quarter of China are descendants of Genghis Khan.
So when you talk about maybe 10% of the world being a descendant of Genghis Khan, I'd have to say it's a wild card. It's a 1/10% of the population was here. But that whole thing, according to at least the movie that's out there, that drive was other tribes in the West coming into Mongolia and murdering his family. So it was an act of revenge and maybe even love for his own family.
Right,
which
so
a
revenge,
lot of these
violence, love, some of these 7 sins, that was as prescribed by, Dante vis-a-vis the Holy Bible. I mean, humans have a propensity to sin against themselves, against nature, against the basic, survival instincts. Beyond that, it becomes emotion, which we talked about, existential dread, basically, what are we doing on Earth? What are we here for? Do we take it personally? Do we get butthurt about things? Well, Genghis Khan got butthurt, but he also said this is a survival instinct. It's us or them. And I get that with war. I get that with, supply and demand in on the Earth. There's not enough supply and there's too much demand.
Plus, whenever, this is back in the day, 300 years and before. I don't think it happens as much now, but you're just hanging out with your friends and family.
Just hanging out.
Everything's going well.
What are you guys doing? Just hanging out.
Just hanging out with my deer skins on, looking into the fire, and all of a sudden, this ruthless group of men come over the hillside and just wipe out your entire family, all of your loved ones, like all the people that you cared most about. And what are the few survivors going to probably do? They're going to be super fucking pissed. Like, can you blame, if like someone killed 80% of my friends and family, I'm going to be pissed. It's going to be hard just to be a peaceful man in that circumstance. And I think that's what drives this whole war, a lot of the cases. Sometimes it's other just financial or benefit
Revenge.
but there sometimes I think it's you can definitely say that war is justifiable.
Well, people are petty too. I mean, people are petty, and that goes back to some of these religions. They ask you to turn the other cheek or be holier than thou. I think maybe Buddha and the Eastern religions had a closer window to the soul by trying to calm or quiet these natures, even in spite of the trials and tribulations every human has to go through, whether it's junior high school or Kandahar, Afghanistan. I mean, this is a war of attrition in human life, and we're trying to bear witness to some of this stuff. And it's psychological, it's philosophical, it's what have you.
The external war of Genghis Khan can be
but
related to the
they
internal
talk about
war
cellular
of
levels, right? So I mean, our cellular levels are we're all descendants of certain European stock that came across. Maybe we had some Viking, maybe we have some leprechaun, whatever. But that's the point. It's like we're akin to all those survival instincts that led up to this, to getting to here, to this day, the great podcast day. And it's a wild card.
Yeah.
And it's wild, man. Wow.
Speaking of fighting, I have a couple wild cards they're a little bit more related to this country in particular.
Yes.
But civil rights and Martin Luther King.
Civil rights,
you went
perfect.
from people manipulating a certain type of people, in that case, a race of people, and a few men standing up. I mean, if it wasn't for Martin Luther King and like the way that he could articulate and make understandable to the masses, and I hate to say like somehow convince probably a lot of Caucasian people to see how ridiculous this really is. I mean, it makes you question a lot, especially I think if you're any sort of religious person, whether it be Christian or Buddha or whatever, you get to see a perspective of the way you look at the world and other people and really question, like, am I really a loving, good person? Like, is it possible for me to hate a group of people? And that, I think like those movements just stir up again the dialogue of what all this is right here.
I mean, the thing is it goes back to still blind demand. Is there enough good in the world to go around to offset all the bad? I think everybody's got a certain amount of prejudice in it, but they, as a part of their upbringings, their influence, their stimulate. But racism, ingrained racism, this is the Achilles heel of America. If America is the greatest country in the world right now, and has been, the Achilles heel of America has and always will be slavery. And slavery as a function of racist and color-based, segregation. Now, plenty of countries have this. India has their caste system. I mean, Japanese think everybody else in the rest of the Asian continent is somehow sub them. So people have a certain ego or God complex or whatever it is, but never was it seen on the level that the Europeans did their slave trade, because it was based strictly on a race. In the days of Roman slavery, it didn't matter what color you were. You were a slave, you were a slave, you were a slave. Then it became this, and I think it goes back to the Kaiser Sose thing, and the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to convince the world he didn't exist. And that would be white people. I mean, white man, they did that stuff, and we're bearing witness of it. Maybe just by talking it won't make things right. I think it's a hell of a wild card to get into, because it becomes kind of a political argument. Maybe politics winds up on there, because this is how human beings start, arguing or debating to get things done, to make progress for people. It was certainly a political discussion for Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, both of whom no longer here because of somebody else's bullets. People who stood up for them were gone. And that just goes to some kind of wicked power struggle since the day immemorial. I mean, we could get down to another wild card. We could say the Illuminati, right? The Illuminati. Is there a gang of humans that got it right early on and have projected a certain, power scheme on the rest of us for the rest of our lives, and they just sit back there and play a game of chess with all of us.
The thing about this, we don't even know if they
You
are
wouldn't know.
real or if they even exist or if it's something that we just
It would be a great
made
wild card
up
to throw up
with
there
our schizophrenic, paranoid minds.
Right,
Maybe
conspiracy theories.
paranoia is up there. I don't know.
Paranoia, conspiracy theory, Illuminati,
It's definitely
9/11, false flags, inside jobs. Would it surprise you, knowing everything else you know about this world, to think about something like that? Well, we might just throw it up there just for shits and giggles. I mean, it doesn't affect this podcast.
It doesn't. But the interesting thing about this podcast, even for me, is it forces me to look at the world in a much grander perspective, because it's hard it's hard, and that's why racism and I think a lot of these things still exist, because it's really hard as a person to get out of your own skin and to be able to really look and to be empathetic to someone else's existence. Like it's really impossible for me and Hall to like really understand racism being white
male.
We just popped out of a vagina in a place with two parents that happen to be white, and
the accident of birth,
to
white
kind of,
privilege,
and
stuff like that.
Just the end. Like at least my thought of this little part of the wild card is also women's rights. Like
Women's
I'll
rights.
never understand. Like we have the whole like Me Too thing going on. I'll never
Misogyny.
fully understand like what it's like to be a woman at midnight walking down a dark alley. I'll never be like I can
A woman
you know
at 10
what?
o'clock in the morning walking
Yes.
down the hallways of her workplace, and why it is that men hate women, I will have a hard time. Maybe it's they got jilted lovers or this and that, but we all came from mothers, and that's really insufferable about all this misogyny and woman hate from the White House on down, is that these guys have no respect for where they came from. And that's what we're trying to build, a certain level of respect. So civil rights, women's rights, human rights, back to the Magna Carta, because the Magna Carta from Great Britain kind of lined out that every man has some inalienable rights. We have a constitution that likes to say that too, even though certain men have more rights than certain other men or women do or did. So that just goes to show it's a slippery slope, and humans love to come up with rules just so we can fucking break them. And that's a good point.
And this will be the most difficult thing for me and Hall to like see and to play out. These are just like highly debatable. It's very personal. Like we really want to kind of do an honest show. These are the things that we're even sensitive about talking about, and how do we separate our sensitivities and our emotion from our intellectual side of like fire versus people's rights. Like,
well, that's easy because we shut it off. In today's day and age, we have sports, not politics. We have Kardashians, not philosophy. It's a certain dumbing down because there's just too much out there. So we're certainly giving this a layman's perspective. We're not being 100% academic about this. But I would say that fame or celebrity, which is an intrinsically human thing. I mean, you could be the most popular prairie dog on the fucking, you could be the most popular meerkat if you wanted to, or the most popular fish in the school. It wouldn't make a difference. But humans somehow value other humans either above themselves or put them on pedestals. And certainly some people belong there, like Shakespeare or Martin Luther King, and other people are just completely, flashes in the pan. And so celebrity and fame is kind of an interesting thing to consider.
I have a confession
putting up there.
As a confession. I actually hope this podcast takes off.
Take it off.
Get a little
Take off, Hoser.
And then at the same time, I'm a highly independent, introverted person, and there's a very fine line that
Eddie
I want
Hajas fan club is soon to be.
that I'd like the fame to go to. Just like some moderate fame.
People want to be famous, so they want money. That's the point.
Or you just want love. You want a little love.
Yeah,
like,
they get
hey,
love. I mean, like Mama over there or whatever it is. I mean, people love to love, and people love to love figurehead people. Like they're any different. They all got to shit, eat, shower, shave, just like the rest of us. They say this saying says never meet your heroes, right? Because you might be disappointed. You put people on a pedestal, and they're just people who push it along. Certainly, some people have remarkable, output in life or input. Like he said, your your ultra marathoner or Winston Churchill, but this is not about individual humans. This is about mankind as a whole and how we got here and how we're going to go forward. So I think about, these wild cards continue to spiral out of control. Think about one of the wild cards this week, this month, this year. Bitcoin, cyber currency, cryptocurrency. This is, a year ago it was worth $1,000 in somebody's valuation. Now it's worth $10,000 and everybody wants a piece of Bitcoin. Next year it might not even exist, but that's doubtful because it's probably the vanguard of some kind of, future. We had gold and precious metals. Then we had paper money, like we've talked about currency before. And now we've got cryptocurrency. We've got Bitcoin. And what a wild card that is. That's a game changer.
It's such a weird one.
It might be a paradigm shift. We don't know.
It could be. We don't know how it's going to play
out. But it's
out.
a recent development, so it's just wild, man.
It's wild because it's really just being used right now for financial gains. And that's like the part of it that like it's still it's hard for me to just like kind of jump into it because like right now it's just being traded like a stock, It's not like really like intertwined into the transactions. And this whole mining thing is just like
you can't
really
spend Bitcoin.
You can. There are some people that
right, but you can't readily spend it necessarily. So
because
for a currency, it needs to be acceptable. I mean, what's a currency? They say, I don't know, cash is king, I guess is the point, and cryptocurrency is not yet king.
Not yet.
But
that'll be
I love putting it. So like,
well, it needs to make that transition. That where you're just like playing around with exchanging stocks. In my mind, I think it's but without a doubt, it's in the wild card discussion. I'm not debating that part of it.
It's just this binary life we live in nowadays. Everything's black or white, ones or zeros. It's a digital, it's a digital frontier that we're going into, and that's we'd be dumb not to think about that. We'd be dumb not to think about artificial intelligence, virtual reality, because eventually these things are going to become so paramount that when we were born, they didn't exist, and when we die, they're going to be, preeminent in most people's lives. Those shifts are happening faster and more often, and with less, consequence maybe, but more pervasiveness. So everything affects people much more readily these days. And maybe just like a plague, it'll come back around full circle and things will spread that much faster too, like the wildfires and all this stuff. So it's all some kind of conflagration of mankind madness and all the shit we've brought to the table. And it continues to never cease to amaze me, but you take it for granted and you don't think about it very often. So whereas there was Bitcoin, think about the guys who were alchemists back in the day, who tried to change, copper to gold or change steel to gold. They said they could do it, and it's chemistry and all this, that's science, but it's also, there's a little bit of witchcraft and things of that nature that kind of added to the mystic of the mystique of it all.
Will Bitcoin just be another alchemy fail? It's hard not to say like alchemy is failed because I've yet to see someone
49er. Is it a gold rush?
Led into gold yet? Like that's yet to happen. Or those people are keeping it. The Illuminati maybe they know how to turn lead into gold. And they're not telling us it's possible. Will Bitcoin be another one of these roads? We'll find out in the next 20, 30 years, maybe in the next year or two, without a doubt.
So, thinking of the wild cards and continuing on, we are a very consumeristic culture these days. And really, there's supply and demand and what used to be manufacturing. We used to be, farmer, before that hunter-gatherer, and then after that, we've just evolved into basically like, hey, man, what jacket is that? What sneakers you wearing? And I'm guilty, too. It's just a consumeristic society. So basically, we're talking about the bazaar, the supermarket, the arcade, the online supermarket, online shopping, basically, consumerism in general beyond, survival and flourishing. We go to basically keeping up with the Joneses and the bigger and the better and the best and the people who are hot shit and the people who have nothing, a pot to piss in. So
the only reason that's even a part of our reality and even possible is because of the 100 or so things that we've thrown
put up on
there. And the consumerism thing right now has kind of washed out this whole board. We have Amazon where Amazon has gone out on a limb, and in a lot of these merchants, that they say if you buy something and return it within a couple weeks, that you can get 100% of your money back. Know why? because they know people are too lazy to return the damn thing, even if they don't use it.
Or they'll keep coming back.
Like those little, it's a dopamine drop. It's like when you push that buy button, it's like buy, and it's like those pair of shoes
money.
are gonna fucking change my life. And you put the shoes on, and you never even remember about having these new fucking awesome shoes ever again.
Right, until you see the guy with another pair of sneakers. So it is that kind of society. It's a very base, consumeristic, materialistic society. So maybe materialism is the word we're putting up here. And maybe we throw materialism. There are abstract ideas here in the wild card area. I mean, abstract ideas that could totally eradicate, like you said, human achievement, but it wouldn't have it without the cotton mill or the windmill or, the cotton gin, things of that nature. You couldn't have all of these, supplies and sundries and gifts and doodads without all of the major achievements that came before it. And that's why we take it for granted. It used to be Teddy Ruxpin talking doll, and then you get some robot, then you get a video game system, and now it's all linked up into a drone avatar, and eventually it'll just be like you stay at home while your guy goes out and does all the other stuff, and you just
the sex robots are just right around the corner. So they are.
It always goes back to porn, and so maybe let's talk about that. What was the oldest profession known to man?
Prostitution.
Prostitution, man. Prostitution's got to be up there in the wild card. I mean, what the hell else has there ever been besides the idea that you couldn't get any, so now you're paying for it? And that was the first form of commerce there ever was, besides bartering for food and for supplies. And people go out there and spend huge fortunes just trying to be fly.
Yeah, talk about like
and it's evolutionary.
A wrench in the wheels of the whole women's movement.
Right.
Because some women did figure it out. Cleopatra, one of them, ended up sleeping with Alexander the Great somehow, and in a lot of ways was an amazing prostitute from what I...
A geisha, an escort, a call girl. And, the women have all the power in this at some level, and then they don't have any power because men control them. So it's very...
I don't know.
Perverted.
I think on some level those women did definitely control some of the most powerful of men.
Right.
Because there's exceptional women in men. They learned how to play the game. Sex being the strongest tendency that any of us have. They were able to learn to master it and get rid of like all the stigmatisms of sleeping with a lot of men. Because if you're a man, I can sleep with as many women as I want. It's in a lot of ways, it's like cherished and revered. Some of that stuff is of course changing.
But you're not getting pregnant is the point. So.
And that's a good point too. But at the same time, these are natural human tendencies. I'm very liberal how I look at a lot of things. The way I look at everything in the world is if you're doing something and you're not influence another person's happiness directly, like raping someone would be one thing, that you shouldn't be able to do that. But if there's two consenting adults and they both want to have sex with many people, who care? Like for me, like who cares?
And they do care. Up in North County polyamory, yeah, I get that.
Of course, but at the other side of the coin, if you want to be a man and you want to date a woman and you want to be monogamous and you articulate that, and that woman goes out and cheats on that guy, then that's ridiculous right there. Just find people that you have sex with, and that guy should also have the right, or woman, to be in a singularity relationship without
so how do we tie that into the wild card thing? Is that Tinder? Is that dating apps? Is that online dating? Is that speed dating? Is that, or is it just go all the way back to prostitution? It's like either you got a girl that loves you, or if you don't, you're going to go out and pay for it. Or you got Fred Garvin, male prostitute, and you got to throw around the gigolos,
the ladies, man,
the dancing bear. Like, yeah, you got Leon Phelps and
out of my Cavassier.
Out of my Cavassier. So it's wild, man. And so the wild cards, I think, is going to really tie this whole room together. It's going to tie this whole bracket together, because where there's something missing, we'll just post up a couple things in there that'll just throw the bracket into balance by being complete out of balance, being outrageous ideas, but maybe abstract, maybe less synonymous with an achievement or an invention or a discovery, and be more in line with just like, that's wow. I mean, playing cards, think about that. Playing cards and games and chess and things of that nature. Like, we always had these games we learned how to play, and there'd always be something like Crazy Eights. Eights are wild, man.
Then you have
just throw a wild card in
chess,
there.
which is in the
In baseball,
game
you have
like
a wild
Go.
card. In football, you got a wild card. You know, yeah, exactly. In checkers, if you get all the way to the end of the thing, you can get crowned or whatever.
Then you have Cards for
Kingly,
Humanity
Cards
that
for Humanity.
doesn't even have any. Well, you collect cards, I
You
guess.
collect cards, and you put together ridiculous. There's ridiculous answers to every question. There's ridiculous questions for every answer that need to be answered, and we intend to answer those questions on this podcast, the Hajas and Hallro Show, via the wild card. So rattle me off some wild cards that we're talking about here.
We have prostitution, right?
Right on.
Prostitution
Pro
and women's what rights?
Okay.
Pro-hose. We have civil rights. We have what? We have war and some of the other famous warlords like Genghis Khan. Right? And
Genghis.
Lighten this whole bracket up. We have some good old fashioned fart jokes,
Comedy.
Little laughter,
humor. You know, so this goes back to maybe literature, or we talk about Shakespeare, vis-a-vis, or Rotund Pelican, who's our good friend here.
Philosophy came out of that.
We talked about philosophy. We talked about architecture. And these are all very macro things. Like, you know, you wouldn't spend a day without architecture. You might spend a day without philosophy. Hopefully you're not spending a day without comedy.
Betty Hage's tiny house experience via architecture.
And we talked about drums. We talked about drums and music, right? And that's a big part of everyday life. I mean, people go out of their way to listen to bad music these days, but I won't get into it. You
Good
know,
old Black Plague.
we got the Black Plague, which would go with war. We just have plague, famine. Now, it's debatable whether or not, outside of war, if we have a choice between plague and famine, certainly famine is in the middle of it, and it kind of is all intertwined. Some way or another, mankind's going to take it on the chin and go down a little bit, and we keep looking at that. I mean, I think Legos, you know, Legos are a great wild card, and Legos, you can't have Legos without Star Wars these days, and Star Wars is one of the great parables, great stories of modern ages, of my lifetime, and I'm sure in a galaxy long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago, it just goes to show it's an age-old story.
In duct tape, that's what started the whole thing out.
Duct tape, duck, goose, right? Okay.
Does it have enough? Does it have enough
Does it
holding
have
powers? We know it has enough holding power.
So, ideally, we're going to see something like this. We have prostitution up against duct tape in this bracket. And this is what you guys can wait to find out when we debate which one wins and proceeds and advances all the way from 64 to 1, the greatest mankind achievement here on Mankind Madness on the Hajas and Hallro Show. We're glad you guys stopped by. I would hope we're belaboring the points just enough for you guys to get a laugh, a cry, and a fart action in every episode.
Thanks for coming along for the journey. Till next time.
Stay tuned. And find us at hajasandhallro.com. Email us at hajasandhallro@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram, Twitter, and every other social platform that you would bother to waste your time on when you're not thinking about mankind's greatest achievements. Love you all.